A warm welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the hour. The airstrikes continue between Israel and Iran, but Israel claims it has full control of Tehran's skies. Relatives of victims of India air crash still awaiting DNA identification of their loved ones. Plus, for the first time in its 116-year history, MI6 will be led by a woman. Let's begin. We're following updates on the conflict between Israel and Iran. One of the latest information is Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, saying the Iranian state TV and radio are about to disappear and that evacuations of nearby residents has begun, referring to the evacuation order issued earlier for parts of Tehran's District 3. Iran's state broadcaster, the IRIB, is in this evacuation zone. Meanwhile, there is huge traffic queues as people flee in the Iranian capital as the military orders people to leave a significant area of the city, meaning such scenes are likely to continue over the next few days. Meanwhile, international citizens have also been making plans to leave Tehran, the Iranian capital. Ghana announced the closure of its embassy and the immediate evacuation of its nationals due to the ongoing conflict. Minister of Foreign Affairs Samuel Ablakwa gave the statement, saying embassy staff, students and other Ghanaians residing in Iran will be evacuated through land borders. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier today said Israel was on the way to achieving victory, reiterating the claim that Israel controls the skies of Tehran. He told those working at the airbase that with God's help they will act, succeed and continue until victory. The Iranian Ministry of Health reports that 224 people have been killed in Israeli attacks since Friday. Let's bring in our staff surgeon, Rachel Lester, who's with the IDF spokesperson's unit. She joins us from Tel Aviv. Rachel, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And we know that those Iranian strikes have hit parts of this city, and then there's this evacuation order. Could you set the scene for us exactly what has happened between Friday and now, before the Iranian airstrikes and even after?
Sure. So for the last, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, we have been running to bomb shelters every few hours between, around 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. or even a couple of times during the day. We have been running to bomb shelters because the Iranians are raining missiles down all across Israel. In the places where the Iranian missiles unfortunately got through and made impact, the scene is straight out of a horror movie. Neighborhoods that were quiet and peaceful just a week ago, now their buildings have been leveled. There is rubble and debris everywhere. Women and children have been killed, and families have lost their homes. I want to emphasize Israel is targeting Iran's nuclear sites, but Iran is targeting Israeli civilian homes. That needs to be condemned loudly and unequivocally by the world.
Is that probably why the Israeli Defense Forces or the Israeli military is advising people within certain parts of Tehran to leave so that they don't get caught in the crossfires between the Israeli military and Iranian airstrikes?
Absolutely. We've seen that in every conflict Israel has ever been in, whether it's Gaza, whether it's Lebanon, and now whether it's Iran, the IDF wants nothing more than to prevent any civilian casualties as easily as possible. That means giving Iranians, time to evacuate. That means giving up a potential strategic advantage by giving this advance notice that we're going to be hitting a certain area at a certain time. But Israel wants to make sure that civilians are not killed, that do not need to be, people that do not need to be involved are not involved. And I think it really goes to show that, Israel takes care of both its own people and the Iranian people whenever possible. And the Iranian people don't care about their own people. They build nuclear sites around places where civilians are going to get hurt. And they also want nothing more than to destroy the Israeli people.
So, Rachel, hours ago, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel had full aerial operational control over Tehran. Do Israelis understand why these attacks are taking place? Because to other people, the Israeli attacks are quite unprovoked.
Okay. Of course, we understand why we're carrying out these strikes. Iran was getting dangerously close to the point of no return with its nuclear program, and they've been illegally building nuclear weapons for for over 20 years. And now they are getting close to the point of no return. It's an imminent threat to the world and to Israel. No question about it. It's an imminent threat. I honestly think that most Israelis are on the same page that this is an uncomfortable step that we have to take now in order to reach safety later. As far as being unprovoked, I find that to be a completely untrue framing of the situation. Not only were these strikes not unprovoked, they are actually necessary. Iran has been, enriching uranium to the point where they now have the ability to make 15 atomic bombs if not stopped. And all the while, they're openly declaring their plan to wipe Israel off the map and inciting their people to chant death to Israel, death to America. Only a foolish country, only a foolish government would let them work toward their goal and kill us all without trying to stop them.
So it's
Oh, and there's something else that I wanted to remind everyone about. Iran has been attacking Israel through its proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis almost every day for the last 619 days. Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis are all directly funded, armed, trained, and supported by Iran. Iran has very much been provoking Israel, you could say, for almost 2 years since the attacks began on October 7th, or you could say for over 20 years when they started illegally trying to wipe us out with nuclear weapons. But to imply that these attacks or that these strikes were unprovoked and that this conflict started only a week ago to the total surprise of everyone in the international community, that would be a lie.
Well, thank you for clearing that, Rachel. But back to what the Prime Minister said, and you say that the Iranian people are chanting, these slogans against the United States and to countries in the West. But he also says Iranian people want Israeli intervention. I did find that interesting. In his interview on Fox News just a few hours ago, I believe it was late last night, he did say the Iranian people do support the Israeli intervention because of the totalitarian regime of the Iranian supreme leader. How true is this? And who could be feeding the Prime Minister such information?
So I want to say that there's no one opinion that represents the entire Iranian people. There are millions of people, and they don't all feel and think the same way. All you have to do is scroll on social media. I have scrolled on social media, and you'll see Iranians who, A, support Israel and oppose their regime, and B, you'll also see the opposite, Iranians who have been fed propaganda from their government and they hate Israel and they support the Ayatollah's mission to wipe Israel off the map. There's no one answer, like I said, there's no one answer to describe the entire Iranian people, but I will say that all Israelis want peace with the Iranian people. It is simply the Iranian people, let me correct myself. It is simply the Iranian government that is working to build nukes that is standing in the way.
So at least 224 people, the Iranian government says, have been killed by Israeli strikes on Iran. How many people have been killed in Israel?
I do not have the latest numbers up until now. I can tell you that women and children have been killed, along with, many people losing their homes. There have been there have been hundreds of people injured. And every single life, whether it's Iranian or Israeli, that is lost during this fight between a democratic country that wants to survive and a totalitarian regime is a tragedy. And I can only hope that no more lives need to be lost in the attempt to secure our country and to secure the world.
So interestingly, evacuation orders have been given in Tehran, but no evacuation orders in Israel, and that's because of the dome that protects Israel and the support you're receiving from the United States that are intercepting some of these missiles from entering into Israel. But those attacks, some of them are still coming in. Do you feel the need to evacuate? Do people feel the need to evacuate certain parts of Israel? Tel Aviv, for instance, Jerusalem, do they need to move to areas that are safer?
I personally feel extremely safe because the evacuation to shelter system has improved even to a greater degree over the last few days. I was woken up on Friday morning in the middle of the night by a blaring alert on my phone saying that it is a state of emergency and that soon we will be required to get close to shelters. And now we are getting those alerts almost, several times a day saying that we are expecting missiles to fall in Israel in the next 10 to 15 minutes, and you have about 10 to 15 minutes, or it doesn't necessarily say a time estimate, but we know that it's about 10 minutes to get to a shelter. I'm very fortunate to have a bomb shelter in my building, and I live on the ground floor. So all I have to do is walk a few feet and go downstairs, and I join the rest of the residents in my building in being in a safe, protected area. And everyone else around the country either has bomb shelters in their building or they have public shelters that they can access definitely within that time frame that we have advanced warning. And I think that just again, like I said earlier, goes to show how much the Israeli government works to protect us Israeli civilians. And I just wish that, other countries could take care of their own citizens the same way.
Rachel, just one more question. Over the weekend, especially Sunday, we did see some Israelis at the supermarkets and at the markets, as many of them as were opened over the weekend, stockpiling because they're quite uncertain what this week would look like for them. Has that been the case in Tel Aviv?
I can tell you that Friday morning I went to two supermarkets to stock up myself on some emergency food and water, and the supermarkets were busy. They were not overly crowded, and I think that at all times, at all normal working hours, the supermarkets in my neighborhood have remained open. I'm in central Tel Aviv, and I think that Israelis are nervous, but they're also staying strong. I want to emphasize that Israelis are extremely resilient and they're not panicking. They're not going out and doing anything crazy. And they're just, if they stocked up on things earlier in the weekend, then they, feel safe and they are in a good place. And if they didn't stock up, then fortunately, supermarkets are still open and working as usual. And I think that, soon this will be behind us. And I just hope for everyone's safety in the meantime.
Staff Sergeant Rachel Lester, thank you for speaking with us and do stay safe.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, Israel and Iran did continue strikes over the weekend despite calls for calm from different quarters. The US President Donald Trump called for both sides to make a deal, adding the calls and meetings are taking place. Now, early on Sunday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in an interview that Israeli strikes have set back Iran's nuclear capacity quite a bit, adding, "I think they were completely surprised." Iran's air defense was activated early Sunday as Israel continued hitting targets near Tehran. The Israeli military says it is striking military targets where Iranian state television said explosions were heard in the city's east and west. An oil refinery and an oil storage were reported to be ablaze. A massive blaze was seen in southern Tehran following the Israeli strikes. While the fire appeared to originate from Tehran's oil refinery, Iran's oil ministry said in a statement the refinery was fully intact and continued to operate normally. Meanwhile, Iran launched a second night of missile attacks against Israel on Saturday. Various of what appeared to be missiles were seen over the sky above Jerusalem, and explosions were heard also in other parts of Israel, including Tel Aviv on Saturday. There were, however, new explosions across the Israeli city of Tel Aviv early Sunday. Sirens sounded in Tel Aviv with missile interceptors visible in the night sky. Israel's fire and rescue services said there were multiple direct hits in the latest barrage, including in Jerusalem, and an 8-story building in the Tel Aviv region. Iran described the attacks on Israel on Sunday as a new phase of their campaign, known as Operation True Promise 3. Residents of Jerusalem were at the shops stockpiling on supplies on Sunday, unsure what lies ahead this week because of the airstrikes.
Rocket bombing in this amount, like 40 rockets and big rockets each night in multiple waves, and it's kind of scary going out at night.
Planned talks on Iran's nuclear program, which could provide an off-ramp, have been cancelled, and the region braces for a protracted conflict following Israel's bombardment of Iran on Friday, killing several top generals and nuclear scientists. Calls for calm have continued from the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. Today, Director General Rafael Grossi confirmed the agency's readiness to respond to any nuclear or radiological emergency within an hour, while calling on authorities in Tehran to continue to share data from the facilities.
Been up and running 24/7 from the start, ascertaining the status of Iran's nuclear facilities and the level of radiation at relevant sites through constant communication with Iranian authorities. The IAEA is ready to respond to any nuclear or radiological emergency within an hour. Based on the information available to the IAEA, the following is the current situation at Iran's nuclear sites. There has been no additional damage at the Natanz fuel enrichment plant site since the Friday attack, which destroyed the above-ground part of the pilot fuel enrichment plant, one of the plants at which Iran was producing uranium enriched up to 60% U-235. Electricity infrastructure at the facility, which included an electrical substation, a main electric power supply building, an emergency power supply and backup generators, was also destroyed. There has been no indication of a physical attack on the underground cascade hall containing part of the pilot fuel enrichment plant and the main fuel enrichment plant. However, the loss of power to the cascade hall may have damaged the centrifuges located there. The level of radioactivity outside the Natanz site has remained unchanged and at normal levels, indicating no external radiological impact to the population or the environment from this event.
As for U.S. President Donald Trump, there's a good chance there will be a deal to de-escalate the conflict between Israel and Iran. Speaking to reporters ahead of a trip to Canada today, President Trump said he hoped for a diplomatic solution, but acknowledged that sometimes they have to fight it out.
Last night was a tremendous success with a fantastic audience. It was supposed to rain. They gave it a 100% chance of rain, and it didn't rain at all. It was beautiful. And so I asked if they gave it 100% chance, right? 100% it was going to rain like crazy, and it didn't rain at all. How did they predict 100 years out and 50 years out or 200 years out? They didn't do too well, the weather people, last night, but it was beautiful. Well, we get along very well, and I will tell you that I think I have great respect for each other. Well, I hope there's going to be a deal. I think it's time for a deal, and we'll see what happens. But sometimes they have to fight it out, but we're going to see what happens. I think there's a good chance there'll be a deal. What? So the protesters, if we didn't have the National Guard on call and ready, they would rip Los Angeles apart.
U.S. President Donald Trump speaking about the Israel Iran conflict. Ahead of Israel's Civil Aviation Authority, Shmuel Zakeh has warned it will take weeks before all Israelis stranded abroad will be able to fly home. Israel's main international airport remains closed for now. Amid the war with Iran, the remarks come as tens of thousands of people are have been stranded abroad since Israel closed its airspace after launching a preemptive strike on Monday against Iranian nuclear and military sites. Well, his remarks dampened hopes among travelers that Israel would carry out immediate return flights from nearby countries, including Cyprus or Greece.
Shabbat, I think if there are flights Thursday night, it's not a given that maybe it'll be via Cyprus or Athens. Where will be for next Shabbat, whether it'll be in Israel or abroad in Europe, but hopefully, potentially at the earliest, Sunday or Monday of next week, unless the skies are not open, in which case we might be here longer. For the first time in 17 years, I did not keep Shabbat. I had my phone with me. Every time I was in the bomb shelter, I let my husband know. I had my Rav at home tell me that it's okay. But it's a tense time to be here. In the time that it's difficult to sleep at night or in the day, there's 1,000,001 thoughts going through my head, and I'm sure every person who's in Israel right now, about friends and family who are here as well as abroad. And we just have to hold each other up. And it's these small acts of kindness that sort of strengthen us together as a people.
Well, most residents in Israel have been recalling the moment those Iranian airstrikes hit targets in their towns. Iran announced it had launched some 100 missiles and vowed further retaliation for Israel's sweeping attacks on its military and nuclear infrastructure, which have killed at least 224 people in the country since Friday.
You can see behind me, this is the result of the latest barrage of rockets fired at our residential communities by Iran. It's continuing the pattern as we're seeing. Each and every one of these scenes are targeting residential communities, civilians in their homes. Early this morning, our police hotline number got the report of a building that was hit. Our first responders and our bomb squad immediately arrived to the scene so that we can medically evacuate those that were injured together with the other first responders that are here, Homefront Command, the medical services. This is something that we prepare for year-round and something that we've been on high alert for since the start of these rocket barrages targeting our residential communities. Right now, at this specific scene, we have well over 30, close to 40 even, injured in various conditions. They are mainly in light conditions because they listen to instructions of the Homefront Command. And I can confirm that at this time there is 3 fatalities. That number is dynamic. It can change. It comes from the medical sources.
We'll have more on the Israel-Iran crisis after the break. Plus, U.S. police arrest man suspected of shooting politicians in the state of Minnesota over the weekend. Stay with us. Africa will be bearing the repercussions of the conflict between Israel and Iran, as well as other conflicts as it impacts trade, the economy, and eventually political alignment. Speaking on our Foreign Affairs program, Diplomatic Channel Security and Public Affairs analyst Alexander Okonkwo says countries like Nigeria need to carefully observe developments surrounding conflicts around the world. He says the impacts of these will be far-reaching on the continent.
Happens with Israel and Iran automatically concerns China, North Korea, and Russia on one side, and then the US and a very divided EU on another side. So already we're already back at the West and East bloc again, even though it doesn't really exist like that. Now, add to that the trade wars we have already. We already have trade wars as we're talking. We already have the economy of the world being disrupted, and we add to it global conflict. Have you not noticed? You must have read about it. The airlines in the Middle East have cancelled some of their flights because while they are flying around, these jets are flying as well. You can have accidents with civil aviation. So it's going to disrupt all the system. Don't forget, that is the main route of transport as well. I think goods coming from China go through the Red Sea and come into Africa and parts of Europe. If all these are disrupted, you and I will pay 3-4 times whatever we're paying for any goods that are coming from China. That's one. The same thing for the Europeans. The petroleum will rise. It's already rising, but it will go to levels over $100 where nobody will be able to afford anything. And so while it is not localized with us now, we should keep a very open eye on the conflict, because the time will come when everybody will call to position himself either with the right or with the left. So to say, I don't want to use the evil and the good. That will be judging. But I will say the right or the left. At one point, each country, each community, each continent will be called to position themselves. And that is how World War started. That's all. So let us not assume that this is just a kid's play.
So I hate to say this, but it seems like we are on the periphery of a major world war. I mean, not just about Israel and Iran, but there's also, what's it called now, Russia and Ukraine. And then we have conflicts on the continent as well that we're fighting, which makes it, puts us even in a weaker position to actually influence anything.
Yes, it is. You're very correct. But our localized conflicts are secondary. You forgot a major conflict, which is Pakistan is Iran. Pakistan, India. Yeah. And they are on the bridge of war as well as we speak right now. And the two countries have nuclear. So what is going to happen eventually if it escalates and expands? Those are two words. It can escalate and also expand. Because it can actually escalate without expanding. But if it escalates and expands, all these other countries I've mentioned will be called to join one way or the other. And we can bet where India is going and where Pakistan is going. And we can bet where Brazil will go to and where Canada will go to. So, and that is how wars start. But in terms of what concerns Africa, our risk for now is more economic than, I would say, political, because we will not be asked immediately to join hands. And Nigeria is in a very good position. We are non-aligned. We're a non-aligned nation. So what it does means is that we talk to everybody. We have friends in China, we have friends with the US, we have friends with the EU. So we are non-aligned, unlike maybe some other countries in Africa that are actually aligned and they would have to join one of the axes or not. So for now, I would say, and there's no need to be too scared about it, it is more of an economic risk in terms of prices doubling and access to goods reducing. And in fact, people not investing, because countries are going to be investing more in ammunition and arms and safety than in, in tomatoes or groundnut oil.
You can watch more of Alexander Okonkwo's thoughts on the conflict between Israel and Iran on Diplomatic Channel, which airs tonight at 8:30 on Sky 515 in the UK and at 11:30 on DSTV 420. You can catch it also on the playlist on Channels Television on YouTube. Let's turn to updates now from the India airplane crash. We're learning that those who survived the crash on the ground began treating the injured, reflecting the human. Meanwhile, relatives have been waiting at the civic hospital in Ahmedabad as DNA testing continues to formally identify the bodies of those killed in last week's horror crash. Family of sole survivor Vishwas Kumar Ramesh arriving at the hospital, as well as distraught relatives of the victims, are waiting anxiously for their own identification results. The UK national Vishwas Kumar Ramesh was a sole survivor of the air flights that crashed in Ahmedabad on Thursday. Authorities have confirmed 270 bodies have been recovered from the site of the crash, including the 241 on board. According to the airline, there were 169 Indian, 53 British, 1 Canadian, and 7 Portuguese citizens on board the aircraft. A man has been arrested on suspicion of killing a Democratic state lawmaker and her husband after a 2-day manhunt in the U.S. state of Minnesota. Police said the chase came to an end in a wooded rural area west of Minneapolis, where he surrendered peacefully and ended up crawling towards the officers. 57-year-old Vance Luther Bolter is charged with killing Melissa Hortman, a Minnesota Democrat, and her husband Mark. State Governor Tim Walz called it a politically motivated assassination. He is also alleged to have shot and wounded Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, who are both now awake in hospital. The G7 summit is ongoing in Canada, and U.S. President Donald Trump is meeting with other heads of state for the annual meeting, days after Israel's unprecedented strike on Iran. Ordinarily, such a development would dominate the high-level discussions. This time round, however, leaders will likely need to also focus on other pressing issues such as trade. It's less than a month until July 9, when President Donald Trump's self-imposed deadline for when dozens of countries, including several present at the meeting, could face higher tariffs unless they ink trade deals to avert further escalation. If no deal is negotiated before the deadline, it's unclear whether Trump would revert to imposing his so-called reciprocal rates, some of which were as high as 50%, or whether countries could face even higher rates. Trump has also raised the possibility of extending the pause even further, though Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent testified last week that that may only be offered for countries who are negotiating in good faith. I want to bring in now Foreign Affairs commentator Collins Weke, who joins us from Brussels. Collins, it's great to see you. It's been a while. I hope you're keeping well.
I am. Thank you so very much. Always a pleasure to be with you, Amarachi.
Right, and we're talking about the G7 summit that's holding. What a peculiar time it is holding in Canada. You're well aware the US president is attending the summit. He's been accused by the Iranian government of taking some responsibility in the Israeli airstrikes on Iran, but he's confident of a deal between Israel and Iran despite the continuation of those airstrikes. You think he intends to insert himself as mediator in this crisis?
Well, I really don't want to be in the team actually preparing this meeting because, as you know, Amarachi, being a consummate, diplomatic journalist, you would know that a lot of planning goes into all of this, and they plan on, things that are actually, fixed, okay, and then develop the agenda. But in this specific case, there have been major security, development, quite apart from the three major issues that actually constituted the agenda of this, summit. We are talking of the evolving global power dynamics, and then you have also the security and development, issues, overlapping crises here and there. And then the third issue that was meant to be on the agenda, and still on the agenda, of course, like you mentioned, is trade, investment, and infrastructure. Now, you add to that mix, the 4-day-old, conflict, serious one, between Israel and, Iran. Now, it's being hosted by Canada, and, like you mentioned, the tariff issues are all there. So, I believe that this is a major opportunity to actually begin to hone home all of these issues, because don't forget that the G7 remains very influential because it represents nearly half of the global GDP, even as it navigates internal tension driven by this same U.S. Protectionism and trade dispute. So, we are watching things unfold, and in the course of the conversation, I might be able to throw some more light on how things are evolving and perhaps what we might expect.
Yes, so let's just stay a bit more on the Israel-Iran conflict, because of course that will dominate at least discussions today with all the leaders there. Iran has cancelled talks with the United States this week following the attacks by Israel. Of course, it believes that Israel is acting as a proxy of the United States. How well do you think that leaders will align at the meeting regarding any discussions on Iran and Israel, of course?
Yes, indeed. Well, it's a revolving door, and indeed, it's a critical question how the leaders are going to align. And that brings me to the point that Alexander was making in the clip that you played earlier around escalation and expansion. Okay, now there is absolutely no doubt that there is an escalation here. Now, an expansion will actually play in when we begin to see some sorts of alignments. Now, let me, focus on, the people that I know, pretty well, because this is where I live, this is where I operate. The EU, which is a major power, they are going to always seek the middle ground. EU is not usually driven by emotions and sentiments. They are driven mainly by the continental interest, but that continental interest happens to mostly align with seeking global, alignment, seeking a global peace. And being in the House, I believe that they are going to play a major role in not actually dancing to one particular side. Unlike the United States of America, no matter whatever Israel does, United States will stand behind it. Because at this moment, I think the most vexing question is how America is going to fortify Israel more, supply them, more powerful, bombardment materials to actually penetrate the nuclear sites of, Iran. One will hope that at this moment, the U.S. will keep to its words that it's not going to, get involved further than it has already done by actually, approving of and seconding the bombardment that is actually going on. And so their plan is, beat them to a pulp, beat them to submission. And so when they have been beaten to submission, they will then, sit down on the table and begin to negotiate. Is that going to happen? Not, from my perspective, in terms of listening to the leaders of Iran, who are adamant that they will come to the negotiating table only when the bombs have gone silent.
Yeah, and respectfully so. So this meeting is taking place, of course, with the G7 there, the UK, the US, France, Italy, Japan. There's also one other leader who does stand out in attendance, and that's the South African president. I'm sure people are wondering why Nigeria is not present at the G7 this year.
Well, it's not Nigeria's time yet, but there are signs that Nigeria's time is coming. Now, these are things you don't force. We're talking of diplomacy here. We're talking of, countries actually proving themselves before they are invited, to the table. One major development, for instance, is the fact that South Africa has overtaken Nigeria as the biggest economy in Africa. But we also see from his body language and the shuttle diplomacy that he has undertaken since taking office 2 years ago, that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been actually playing that responsible role, putting Nigeria back on the global agenda as a power to reckon with. I believe that if he continues along that line and actually fortify one of the areas that he's been overlooking, which is the strength that the Nigerian diaspora bring to Nigeria's foreign policy. If he takes advantage of that as an asset and then, continue to do the right things that he's been doing, showing up in the right places and all of that, I believe that it's not going to be, long before Nigeria is invited to the table, just like South Africa.
Well, the US president has always wanted Canada to be the 51st state of the US. They had that rather stiff meeting at the Oval Office when Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney showed up at the White House, where he also emphasized to the US president Canada will not be taking up 51st as this membership state of the US. But now you have Trump coming to his soil. What do you think the optics will be like for both of them?
Well, the first signs of how they are going to get on has already taken place. Let's not forget, Amarachi, that McCartney has already visited the Oval Office. I mean, what didn't play out, in his visit was the sort of scenario we saw between Trump and, Zelensky. And so he is in the game. I mean, McCartney, he's, an international player. He's been doing all of these before. And, he has also shown, the political acumen that he has, because don't forget that, even campaigning to be prime minister, he already talked very tough, made it very clear that Canada is a sovereign nation and nobody, not the, strongest political figure in the world in Donald Trump can actually trample on, Canada. So publicly, he has done that, empowered, the psyche of the Canadians. But now, what he's focused on is bilateral, sitting down in closed doors, and beginning to actually negotiate and, telling Trump, well, I mean, you've done your, public diplomacy, I've done mine. This is now the time to, look at what is in need for all of us. Canada has a lot to gain from America and, exactly the other way around as well. And I believe that what both of them will be doing is playing up what they mean to the other country in terms of the values, that they represent. Take steel, for instance, take energy as another instance, and how much, both of them could gain by a reasonable tariff regime. And, well, it is difficult to predict because Trump has made it clear that he's a tariff kind of guy. And, Marcani is completely on the other side of, of the divide. So it remains wait and see, but at least the war of words will cease or has already ceased, and the negotiations through diplomatic channels will take over.
Well, if you could briefly talk about the Trump travel restrictions and how this may be discussed. I'm thinking at the G7 summit, perhaps with some other nations that will be attending, apart from the core G7 members. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you think other countries interpret what the U.S. government has done?
Well, immigration, one way or the other, was already on the agenda, and Trump and security, of course. Trump positioned his, visa ban for a number of countries, and there is rumor also flying around that additional 36 countries, are included in a memo coming from, the Secretary of State of, the United States, Mark Rubio, among which is Nigeria. So it is not a major, it's not going to be a major conversation because it is a problem far from the bed of most of, in fact, all the G7 countries. So they are not affected. But they also have that moral burden to talk about the things that ache, their partner countries. And I believe that, through bilaterals, those that, have the opportunity, I mean, the leaders that have the opportunity to have one-on-one bilateral with Trump, that they are going to raise it as a way of initiating the conversation and, seeking some understanding. But let's also be fair to the United States. Every country has the right to actually protect its borders. And if it is indeed so that the countries included in this visa ban actually harbor quite a lot of risks for the United States, I think it's only reasonable for them to act. But is that entirely the case? Well, not for Nigeria, because we do know that over a decade now, Nigeria has, instituted a biometrics, passport regime, and that is, that gives more credibility to Nigerian, passports. Now, anybody ignoring that is, actually being completely unfair to Nigeria. And I think the same example could be cited for other countries as well. So, ultimately, they will get down to the table, discuss it as much as they can, but it is not a major agenda of the G7 summit.
Well, incidentally, the G7 countries that are attending this meeting all have immigration issues, so I'm thinking that they will be rubbing minds with the U.S. President. Collins, thanks again for speaking with us.
Always my pleasure. Thank you, Amarachi, for having me.
And that takes us to a second break now on The World Today. Still ahead. And let these balloons take you high into the sky, far away from the world below, from all of your problems down. Of course, you still come back to them, but we're at the Big Hole Local Festival in the Philippines. Welcome back to The World Today. U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered an expansion of the detention and deportation of migrants across the country as protests against his policies continue. In a post on Truth Social, Trump called on federal agencies to do all in their power to deliver the single largest mass deportation program in history. naming Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York as specific targets. And these cities among the many where large-scale protests have broken out against raids on undocumented migrants since June 6. Trump has faced legal challenges and criticism for his response to the protests, particularly his deployment of the military to quell the demonstrations. Trump says he's directed the entire administration to put every resource possible behind this effort. He's also promised to prevent anyone who undermines the domestic tranquility of the United States from entering the country. MI6 will be led by a woman for the first time in the Foreign Intelligence Service's 116-year history. Bless Mitchwelly, who joined the Secret Intelligence Service in 1999, will become the 18th chief of the organization and take over from Sir Richard Moore later this year. She's currently responsible for technology and innovation at the service and says she's proud and honored to have been asked to lead. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer called the appointment historic at a time when the work of our intelligence services has never been more vital. MI6 is tasked with gathering intelligence overseas to improve the UK security, with its core aims being to stop terrorism, disrupt the activities of hostile states, and bolster cybersecurity. Its chief, commonly referred to as C, is the only publicly named member of the service. The 47-year-old Metwelly is currently Director General Q, head of the crucial Technology and Innovation Division that aims to keep the identities of secret agents secret and come up with new ways to evade adversaries like China's biometric surveillance. Gunmen have killed the mayor of the Mexican municipality of San Mateo Piñas in the latest deadly attack on local officials. Witnesses said 4 armed men arrived on motorcycles, stormed the village hall, and opened fire on the mayor, Lilia Guima Garcia Soto, and a local official who was in a meeting with her, Eli Garcia Ramirez. 2 municipal police officers were also injured in the attack. While officials are still investigating the possible motive for the killing, local officials are often targeted by criminal gangs for failing to do their bidding. The governor of Oaxaca has condemned the latest killing, adding the crime would not go unpunished. Now, in a moment, we'll see the skies in the Philippines bursting with vibrant colors and the wonder of giant hot air balloons floating gracefully at the anticipated Bicol Local Festival 2025 in Ao Bay. Well, these images look really magnificent. Hot air balloons up in the sky, attendees, some of them inside the balloons, some of them on the ground, being treated to a variety of stunning flying exhibitions, including skydiving, motorglading, along with captivating performances by the Global Stars aerobic team at the historic Old Legazpi Airport. In February of 2024, Mayan volcano, celebrated as the world's most perfect cone of volcano, most active in the Philippines, experienced a deadly eruption in June 2023. Now it's undergone a phreatic eruption lasting 4 minutes 9 seconds, producing a towering 1.2-kilometer high plume of smoke, which hopefully will not be disrupting the celebrations. This 3-day festival ends today, but it attracts 500,000 tourists each year. That's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.